I'm going to tell you today the story of the time that a scammer gave me some, not all, but some of my money back, simply because he felt bad. My name is Briana Hansen, and this is a spark. So, my very first trip overseas, I got the opportunity to go to Italy. It was part of the program that I was studying with in college, and I got the chance to go for a summer, basically overseas, and live in Italy for like several weeks. And I had never been overseas. I was going on my own. So at the time, I really didn't even know how to set up the trip. And I had very little money. So I did whatever the cheapest route Expedia told me was, which meant in the afternoon, some random afternoon in the summer in Cincinnati, I went from Cincinnati, Ohio to New York, LaGuardia. I took a shuttle bus from LaGuardia to JFK. I got on an international flight at JFK to go to London, and then from London, I got on another flight to Rome. It's worth noting this is a route I would never take now, but at the time I was like, well, that is the cheapest route, and technically it gets me there. I hadn't really factored in the fact that I would need to, I don't know, rest, or there could be delays at some point, but neither here nor there. More or less, it worked out smooth, and I found myself very exhausted on the flight from London to Rome, understandably so, since that was a lot of hours of traveling and not a lot of money for nutritious meals in between traveling, nor any space to actually get any rest. So I remember on the way to Rome, I was sitting next to a couple London kids, local London kids. They were at least English. I don't know. I didn't get the exact coordinates of their home, but I was so tired. I was sleeping on the plane a little bit, and I was trying to be friendly. And so they were sitting next to me, and I remember half waking up and being like, "Yeah, yeah, if you need to, you can like sleep on me. It's not a big deal. It's just totally fine." Kind of mumbled something, and I think their parents were like looking at me like she just looks tired, but then she just said my daughter could sleep on her. That's a weird thing to say. And eventually I kind of woke up and I was like, sorry if I said something weird. I'm tired and I was trying to be friendly. And they were like, oh, you're American. And then I guess these young girls had never seen an American in real life. Lucky them. And they were like, oh, your A's are so funny. They were like, say Abigail, say Abigail, say Abigail. I was like, Abigail. And they're like, ah, ah, like British people do. So anyway, I get to the airport and I had done, in case you hadn't picked up on this already, no research on, what happens at international airports. I now live in Los Angeles, which is important for two reasons. One, the flight pattern overseas is now LA to the city I'm going to. I am no longer a multi flight person if I can help it. But two, it's important because I see the same thing happen in Los Angeles at the terminal where the international flights come in. It is illegal. And if you ever are offered a ride from someone random just sitting about, don't take it. This was many years ago, and I did not know that that wasn't something you should do. So I get off the flight and I see a line of taxis. And then there are these very friendly people who are just rounding up tourists, being like, come on, I'll give you a ride. Where are you headed? I'll give you a ride. I'll give you a ride. And I was like, how great is this? Someone's going to give me a ride. So I got into their car. One, I was tired. Two, I was overly trusting. And three, I didn't know better. So a few other people, so I didn't get in the car alone, thank God, because I probably would have at the time. I was again tired and overly trusting at that phase in my life. But instead, I got in the car. There were like several of us tourists. We all got in the same rickety van, and they just asked where we were headed. And luckily, I did sort of know where I was supposed to be going. So I tell them, and I'm the last one dropped off. Now, there is not a meter running. They're just basically going to give you a ride. And I didn't know the first thing about that. So many things about this are so incredibly dangerous. But really, they were just, opportunists. I don't want to say scammers because they were technically doing the thing that they promised. They were just, what they're doing was absolutely illegal. And it's just a hustle, right? Instead of getting in a taxi, which would have been metered and had insurance or whatever. I just got in a car with a random person. So there were several of us in the car, and the last one dropped off. And I remember when he dropped me off, I was just like, how much? And here I was with this stack of newly minted euros that was supposed to last me basically the whole summer. I, again, didn't have a ton of money, hence the routing, but I was like, I knew that I would be, some things were taken care of through the program and it wasn't that big of a deal. So I'm just standing here, this, 20 something tourist, fresh off the plane, absolutely exhausted, all my possessions right there. Nobody knows that I'm coming except my program, but they're not like sure my flight pattern. And I just have a big stack of bills. And I was like, how much is it? And he looked at me and he was like, and I think I didn't even speak Italian very well. And I just handed him like 200 euros. 200 euros for and this is 20 years ago. So that's a lot of money. And it's a lot of money now. It's a lot of money now. And at the time, the exchange rate was like a dollar to $1.50 or something. It was something where it was like, that wasn't said right. It was something where like the value of a dollar was essentially, the value of a dollar was 1.5 to 1 euro, meaning it was more expensive. 1 euro was worth more than $1. That's the way I should have said it. So I handed him not just like not $200, but like 300 euros basically for this ride, this shared ride that a bunch of other people done. And I hadn't taken any notes of how much they had paid or anything. I just kind of handed it to him and smiled. And I remember him looking at me, looking at the stack of cash still in my hand, the stack of cash I had just given him, and like sighing. And he was like, and he like handed me back half of it. So I only ended up giving him like 100 euros, which was like $150 or something, which is still an astronomical amount. I'm sure it would have been way cheaper to have just taken a taxi or any sort of legitimate ride service that I could have looked up beforehand. This wasn't like pre-internet days. I could have definitely done that, but I just didn't. And so I just remember him like looking at me, and I treated him like he had just done me the biggest favor in the world. I was like, thank you so much. What a kind gesture. I really, really appreciate that. That's so nice of you. People said that people would try and scam me in Rome, and I got to watch out for people. But here, the very first person I interact with is just a generous and kind person. So thank you so much. And I don't even know if he spoke enough English to like pick up on the fact that I was thanking him for something that he did not need thanks for. But it was still pretty funny. The life lesson from that, if there is one, was simply, I was okay, but what I have now learned to do is if and when I am headed somewhere, I look up beforehand transport and transit, because the truth of the matter is that could have gone a different way. Either he first of all could have taken, more money. But there was a lot of other things, a lot of other dangers in a giant city that could have happened just as easily. And when I see people, like I said, arriving in LA and I see these kind of like hustlers, I give them a good glare or I tell them to go away. And I do my best. I think people have gotten savvy enough to it, but you never know, to not take that ride that someone's offering you, someone you don't know. Good rule of thumb, don't get in a car with someone you don't know. I do have a separate story of how I did it another time, and it was totally fine. But, a couple more times. It was totally fine. But, the one lesson is do your research. And then the other one, I think, what really struck me is once I had slept and I talked to other people about the travel experience and, all the other things involved in that, what I learned was like, I do think that this guy was actually just like not a bad guy. He was just a hustler doing a hustle. And even he had his limitations on how much he was willing to take advantage of people. Even though he easily could have. The money was in his hand and he handed it back to me. So never underestimate the power of good intentions, and never underestimate the importance of planning ahead. I'll talk to you again soon.